That turned out to be an absolute disaster because month 13 rolls around, you send them a quote for continuing maintenance, and they're like, well, I didn't pay for that last year.
That guy in IT that's a nightmare when you're trying to install the system, he's going to be a nightmare for you as well down the road when you're trying to service the system.
And, it's a lot of wasted, unbillable hours on my part. We've lost large clients because we haven't forced the issue. We've been tracking it, and I mean, we're in the high 80s, low 90s of percentage of people that are on leases versus purchases.
So it's a huge cash flow benefit to whoever is purchasing the equipment from you via the lease. It is an incredible closing tool.
All right, well, welcome to the Coffee Break with Jake call. We have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. The purpose of the call is to bring together security professionals from all over the country, and in some cases all over the world, to share best practices, to ask questions, to find out what challenges folks are facing and how they're overcoming them. The purpose of today's call is specifically to talk about building recurring monthly revenue through contracted service agreements with commercial systems. But we're also really excited to have Peter McCoy with us from New Lane Finance to answer any questions as it relates to financing commercial systems, surveillance, access, fire alarm systems, all that. And so as we get started here, just to get a gauge on things, how many of the folks in here are installing commercial systems with a ticket of over $50,000? Is there anybody in here that might be doing projects where the ticket on a commercial system is over $50,000? Perfect. Good, good, good. Keep your hands up for me. All right, great. Keep your hands up. Don't drop them. And I'm going to go through here. I want to call on a few folks. First of all, and I'll do it out of order. Guys, I'm sorry. That's just how my brain works. So I'm going to start with Mindy. Hey, Mindy, really great to have you on the call. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, sir. Hi there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Happy to have you on. And so Mindy is a rock star sales rep. She does an incredible job selling security systems. Mindy, tell us where you're calling in from, what company you're with, and what you do there.
Yes, so Oklahoma, kind of Oklahoma City area. I'm with Alcom Security Systems, and yeah, we do anything from the residential all the way to commercial to surveillance trailers. Really anything to protect a space is kind of where we're at.
Awesome. And so on those commercial projects that you're doing, what's the scope of work? Are you doing everything from video and access, intrusion? Tell me about, like a typical commercial project. What boxes are you checking there?
All of it, really, or I try. Sometimes they'll call in just for, what they consider a traditional security system, and then it goes into the access control, the video. Other times, like I just had one yesterday, they called strictly for video. But then I did also learn that they had some access control needs, some even smart automation type needs that alarm.com was actually going to be a pretty good fit for. Sometimes it's all in, other times it's just asking a lot of questions while you're on site, and you learn that, okay, hey, we can do all of that, and then you have one hand to shake and you're not having to use 30 different companies to accomplish it all.
As you're selling these types of systems, what type of service plans are you offering with those systems? Any type of inspections, maintenance, warranties? What is it that you guys offer in terms of a service agreement after the install?
Yes, so we do always offer maintenance, especially with access control, because we find that we do return to a lot of those with the electric strikes, or maybe it tends to be helpful for the company to go ahead and do a maintenance agreement on that, because then they're not getting frustrated every, trip out there that we have to do. And a lot of times it's like the end user is just doing something by mistake. It just
People are
feels
dumb,
like
is what you're saying. You're saying you got a lot of dumb customers here on a recorded call. Unbelievable, Mindy. Unbelievable.
it's just like, oh, you had it unlocked when you know what I mean? Like just simple
Sure.
things that day, but you don't know until you're out there. And so I really love maintenance agreements, kind of like that. Quality service plan is what we call it. And then with video, there's quite a few different levels that you can go there because you can have just strictly 24/7 recording. You don't want notifications. It's just basic all the way to, okay, let's add some notifications. Well, do you want the notifications to go to you? Do you want it to go to the police? Then you can turn it into remote video monitoring through alarm.com or PVM, the proactive video monitoring, which is great on big commercial properties that have assets on the outside that they're protecting. So video is a good way to adjust that RMR.
Awesome. And so I want to go back. I want to come back to video real quick, but I want to talk about pricing for that quality service agreement that you offer. What How did you guys come up with pricing for that? Is there a specific kind of guideline as you're selling this project based on the size of it to help you come up with what that monthly rate might be for that quality service agreement?
Yes, we are learning on that. We
Sure.
we have settled on if we did $25 per door on access control, that can kind of get us the access to alarm.com plus the quality service plan. That has sort of worked out okay. But honestly, it's a new feature for us. We haven't even gone a full, I mean, we're getting close to a full year of having the quality service plan. It has been beneficial. I see it on both sides. It's been beneficial for both parties, actually.
I appreciate the honesty and like, hey, we're kind of still figuring some of this out because, I have found that a lot of folks spend so much time trying to figure something out before they offer it that they never end up offering it. And so it's like, well, how do we price this? Well, we can't until we have it figured out, we can't chart, we can't bill somebody for this, we can't offer it. But what I think one of the unique things is about the business that you're in is that you get to experiment with it on a case by case basis and make like a small bet on a customer to say, hey, look, I think $25 a month per door makes sense. Let's try that, add that RMR, and then like maybe we should look at this 6 months in, a year in, 3 years in, and figure out, hey, does this make sense? And is that kind of the plan there is just to evaluate it over time?
Yes, like, we have a church that's been about a year in, and they did theirs was also a lease option. It was a little different too, but we've made quite a bit on that because they're leasing the equipment and there's a quality service plan in there, and we've only had to make a couple trips back out for some internet issues. Everything has ran pretty smoothly. So for them, it's been great. We've benefited a lot on the cost.
Awesome. And I think this is one of those things that as you do it and you roll it out on a case by case basis, you measure it on a case by case basis, you measure it across the aggregate number of accounts that have those types of plans, recognizing that some of those accounts may be more profitable, some of those accounts may be less profitable, but still helping you to arrive at a pricing model that makes sense. Mindy, thank you. I want to come back to you afterwards on that leasing conversation. But before we get into that, I want to ask, we've got Eric McKim on the call. So glad to have you on, Eric. I want to ask you about quality service agreements as Mindy refers to them. First of all, tell us a little bit about your company, where you're calling in from, and what type of commercial systems you guys are installing today.
Sure, thanks. Consistent with Mindy, we typically install your traditional systems: access, video, intrusion, fire. Calling in from Northeast Ohio is where we're based out of. We also have an office in Orlando. Specifically related to our larger projects, we have really been horribly deficient in service maintenance agreements. We'll offer fire inspections, which will roll into recurring. We'll offer health check around video, but specifically around, and obviously then the software add-ons. But relevant to service maintenance, we really have struggled. When I came in 8, 7, 8, 9 years ago, we didn't do it at all. We struggled with pricing, and I love your comment to just do it. We weren't sure. What do you charge a percentage of the install? We got existing customers that already have things out in the field. How do you roll that into the new add-ons? And never really started doing it, but it's always been on our list to do it. A lot of our projects are bid work too, into existing clients, but a lot of bid work around municipalities and schools where, as you guys know, you can't attach recurring to that. So it becomes a tough conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I think that kind of going back to that, starting with just kind of trying it out and doing it, I want to put a disclaimer on that to the folks that are on the call here. Don't make bets that can put you out of business, right? Like, like don't come in and promise the world to your biggest customer, biggest account that has the most service, the most complicated systems. That's a mistake. But when we talk about some of these systems and experimenting with it, you can start with some of these that are more of your standard.
You know, on the flip side of that though, Jake, we've lost large clients because we haven't forced the issue. Couple in particular, had we forced a service maintenance plan up front, would have provided a better relationship ongoing. We had some clients specifically in the cannabis industry and then in the logistics industry where we did a lot of big projects for them. And ultimately what had happened was we didn't force them to invest in a maintenance plan, which didn't force us to build out the infrastructure to support their needs. And so we would always constantly have to drop everything we're doing to go out and support them. And when we didn't, they said, "You guys aren't committed to us. We're done with you."
Yeah.
And I think had we forced it, it would have been a win-win.
Yeah, such a great point too, because when you get somebody to sign up for that service agreement up front, the service is built into what you've offered. They've agreed to it, and they're not continually spending what I would consider to be bad money to service a system. I mean, how many times, whether it's justified or not, how many times have the folks in the call heard from a frustrated customer because they were upset that you were having to come out and service their access control system again, their camera system again? And the truth of it is when you came in there, you probably gave them two proposals. One of the proposals was, "Hey, you got a lot of crazy stuff in here. Let's swap all of that out because we want to be able to do this right. We don't want to have any issues with you. We could give you, if not a service agreement, we could warranty this for a period of time," right? But the customer said, "Well, no, I've spent so much money on these existing, systems. We don't want to have to rip everything out." And you say to them, "Okay, we'll do it. But disclaimer, if we have to come out and service it, it's going to cost you. We just want to let you know that up front." Now, customer at that time says, "Yeah, totally. Eric, I'm in. Thanks for agreeing to save me money. I'm not too worried about it." Unfortunately, they have total freaking amnesia 6 months down the road when you're coming back out for the third time to try to troubleshoot ground faults or some kind of weird issues with the system because you didn't install it to begin with. And they don't remember when you said, "Hey, look, we should do this right to begin with." And I think, Eric, that is a type of scenario where when we talk about forcing the issue, your customer without that standard is going to be an angry, frustrated customer throughout the life of their account. And how dangerous is that? Like, not just in terms of the potential for that customer, that account to churn, but like, what if they tell other people what a nightmare it is to do business with you, right? And so, like, I have this woman that I love. Like, she's just the sweetest woman. She's my mom's age in Texas, and she sells camera systems, and she will only sell camera systems with a maintenance plan. If you don't want it, they don't sell it. They won't do it because even though they know that there's not even a monthly cost with the camera systems that they install, no recurring monthly expense, but they won't sell it without service because she's found that after the sale, people need their cameras adjusted. People need their cameras cleaned. People need new users added to the system. People need video pulled from the camera system. And when they don't offer the quality service agreement, as Mindy calls it, those customers get frustrated. Eric, anything else you wanted to add on service agreements?
No, I think that covers it.
I'm going to jump to Brent. Tell us where you're calling in from and what type of service agreements you guys are offering.
Currently, I'm sitting in our condo in Daytona, but we are in Ingersoll, Ontario, Canada. From a service agreement, what I've learned over the last several years is to not separate residential from commercial. What I've done is I've separated it from scope of work and size of system. So, for instance, a regular residential customer, they might do burglar system, 6 to 7 cameras. And so normally what we're doing is we're creating a recurring revenue model inside of their monitoring, saying one fee for monitoring, maintaining your cameras, keeping your security system up to date, training, all those types of things. If as long as the system is under 32 zones for the security system and under 8 cameras, then we have a set price for that. And it's right off the bat. What I've learned, it's not doing anybody any favors, is we used to do a job and include everything for the first year, all embedded into the price of the install. And that turned out to be an absolute disaster because month 13 rolls around, you send them a quote for continuing maintenance, and they're like, well, I didn't pay for that last year, even though that they did, but it didn't show up as a line item and they don't like that. So right off the bat, we're doing that as a line item in our quotes. What we are doing is giving from a maintenance standpoint on a commercial job so if you have access control, networking, security, and video, we do break them all into separate categories based on the size of the system. So for access control, if it's less than 4 doors, it's a service call of $150 a month. So we're saying, if you have less than 4 doors, $150 a month to maintain all of those doors. Under 32 zones for security, it's included in your monitoring. Cameras, if it's over 8 cameras, then we come up with a price based on, we did a huge dairy operation. They've got 78 cameras on their farm. So we came up with, that was the first time we had done one that large.
So just to stop you for a second on that, I have a question. It sounds like you've really standardized on the pricing model, right? And I suspect that you've been able to do that by standardizing on products and services too, right? So like, is there when you're offering these standard kind of pricing models, does it require that it's equipment that you've installed, or are you willing to take the risk on other systems?
On standardized equipment, so we try to generally only do 2 systems, and that would be DSC and Paradox security. For cameras, we are either doing Alon if they're doing full-blown home automation, Invid, and Provision are our 3 camera brands. So if it's equipment that we've standardized on, and I've kind of gone back on all the historical data of how many cameras we're replacing under warranty, how many defects or problems are we having with particular items, whether it be smoke detectors, glass breaks, motions, trying to pick out models that we know are going to give us and the customer the best reliability. And then using all of our historical data to come up with a fair and reasonable RMR for us and for the customer, saying, hey, on average for this product, we're having to come back once or twice a year to do a cleanup or maintenance or firmware updates or those types of things. So like I said, we don't do it residential or commercial. So for example, we just did a veterinarian hospital and 25 cameras, full blown security, 3 doors of access control. And then we did all of the structured cabling. As a caveat, and I know that I've talked about this in previous calls, the networking, I do not have control of the network on that particular site. And now, as of yesterday, I have my own internet connection because their IT department was a nightmare to work with. And the security and the cameras keep losing their IPs. And so now I'm into a service agreement with a component that basically can take down everything that I've installed, and I didn't have any control over it.
That is I think anybody on the call here that is thinking about offering service agreements or currently offering service agreements and not controlling the network, I think Brent's note on that should not be overlooked. So many of the times that techs are rolling out to a site, it's to reset a switch. It's to change something because they changed out a router and now they've got to change the IP address on a camera. I will say that we've seen a lot of dealers that have been able to overcome that by either having their own internet service into the building so that it is their own network that they're controlling, or even relying on cellular connectivity for access control, even camera systems. That guy in IT, that's a nightmare when you're trying to install the system. He's going to be a nightmare for you as well down the road when you're trying to service the system. So really good call out on that, Brent.
I fought them in the very beginning. So this has been going on since December, and they have fiber in the building. And I know that the ISP that they're using, I'm familiar with it. I said, look, just get me another block of IPs. I'll put my own router in, and it won't cost you anything. And because their IT was responsible for the internet, he was saying, no, it's going to cost them money, and they don't want to spend more money. And the biggest issue that we were having is that the IP module for the Paradox, and I am doing cellular backup, but the Paradox, you can't reverse it. Maybe on the new HD panels you can, but on the current panel, the primary is always the IP module and the secondary is always the cellular. And I've been getting woken up at 1:30 in the morning because it's not that they've made changes. It's the network. The network module actually believes it's being tampered with and unplugged. So there's something going, their network is going to sleep to save power. They couldn't figure it out. And, it's a lot of wasted unbillable hours on my part.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I think it goes back to what Eric was saying as well, talking about how they had a customer that they could have, maybe if they'd forced the issue of a service agreement, they wouldn't have ultimately ended up losing the customer. For everybody on the call, and I want to move on to leasing and financing, but but having talked about service agreements here, some folks on the call might have joined today hoping that the folks that were kind of sharing the details of their service agreements would outline a pricing model that you could take back and would work for you. I'm sorry to disappoint, right? I don't think that you could take Brent's pricing model or Mindy's pricing model or maybe Eric's pricing model and go with it today and it 100% makes sense. I think that what we've learned in talking with Brent and Mindy and Eric is that number one, if you are going to offer service agreements, to insist on standards, right? If you're going to commit to servicing a system, to make sure that that system checks the boxes to ensure it's not going to be a service nightmare for you, to maintain control of as much as you can, remote control ideally, right? Can you log in remotely and change some of these settings or troubleshoot some of these settings? And then also modeling your pricing over time, continuing to monitor your cost to service those accounts, continuing to monitor how profitable it is for you. I do want to add one other note on this, which is that just because you miss the opportunity to sell a service agreement at the time of install, does it mean that you can't continue to offer and market service agreements throughout the life cycle of the customer? And the best time to do that is the next time they have an expensive bill associated with servicing that account. The next time you go out there and it's going to be $150, $250 to change some batteries, whatever it might be on the system, think about that as a really prime opportunity to talk to them about your quality service agreement that, might include annual battery changes, inspections, tests, and maybe that's something like 20. And again, I'm not suggesting any of this pricing. You need to figure out what works for you, but maybe that's $15, $20 a month. People pay for insurance to know that they're not going to have some big unexpected bill. That's why you have insurance. And I think that's what service agreements are. For most folks, investing a lot of money into a system is insurance to know that they're not going to have some big unexpected expense with the system. So thank you guys for sharing that on service agreements. I want to go back. First of all, I want to introduce Peter McCoy. Peter, are you able to jump on and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do there at New Lane?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm with New Lane Finance. We do commercial equipment finance by Wisfus Bank, which is a $20 billion bank. And we do financing on security systems, access control, fire systems, whether that's a lease, an EFA, a rental agreement. I think Jake and I We've known each other for what, maybe 15 years. So yeah, we offer payments to the customer for any kind of equipment that you install.
I want to dig into some of that with you, Peter. But first of all, is there anybody on the call that's currently offering, and I know Mindy, you'll have your hand up on this as well. Is there anybody out there that's currently offering any type of leasing to customers today? Is that it? We've only got 3 folks that are doing leasing on commercial systems. 4? Okay, cool. Mindy, talk to me about that lease that you guys did on that, or just in general, some of the systems that you guys might be doing leasing on today.
Yeah, so the most recent one was just at a church, and they didn't have enough money to put down to like pay for it up front. And so honestly, I'm probably not the best example because we kind of just look at every situation individually and decide like, can we vet this customer? Because we also don't want to do a lease option if we don't think that they're going to be able to make the payments. So it's
I got
most
that news for you on that church, by the way.
oh no.
What the people in the condo anywhere they get it the longest time, they subsidize it. We love doing churches, right? But man, aren't they the worst payers?
It's tough sometimes. So we also we look at it individually and then we just mark it up enough to feel comfortable with it. We almost always charge, of course, for labor and everything up front so that we can pay all of our guys. We add in a markup for our in-house work. And so we get some upfront costs covered. And then the lease option just allows us to then it has the quality service plan in there too. Because it's then Alcom's equipment at the place. And then in 5, 6, whatever, 10 years, if they're ready to update some stuff, we just swap it out and continue on.
Is there a simple formula for figuring out that price every time? It's okay to say
I don't-
no.
I don't have
Well, honestly, that's why I called on you. And I think that it's, what I know about Alcom is Alcom's a great company, leading provider there in Oklahoma, the leader in the Oklahoma City area. And they have the wherewithal to do some financing in-house. But we've got Mindy on the call as a sales rep that doesn't right now have a very simple formula for just going out and quoting a job and then saying, hey, here's the upfront price and here's the monthly price on equipment. And Mindy, would it help you? Would it make it easy for you if you could just know exactly what that monthly price would be? Either way, it's the same money to the company every time.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that would make it easier. But
Yeah. So can you speak to that, Peter? So when we talk about leasing, talk to me about how systems integrators can make it really easy to figure out what that monthly price should be every time.
Absolutely. So we use what are called rate factors and equipment finance. That's basically a payment multiplier. Jake, you're very familiar with this, but when you have a equipment cost, you can take that, multiply it by the rate factor and get the payment on the customer. So if you know what you need to get paid from like a cash standpoint, I've got a quote tool. You can plug that number in and it'll spit out a monthly payment for you. And then you know exactly, what to offer that customer. So
Yeah, and another note on this for the folks that are on the call, I love, again, I can't stress this enough. I love that Alcom is willing to try and experiment and do different things. And they have the wherewithal that if that church doesn't pay, they're going to be just fine. Like it's going to be fine. Mindy's not losing her job. They're not going to not pay their vendor, which, good news for me, right? But there's folks on the call here, and I want to emphasize this, that are looking at potentially offering some type of financing to customers. But I can't tell you how often I have to have uncomfortable conversations with our dealer partners because their cash flow has turned into crash flow because somebody didn't pay them, right? And so I want to emphasize on this point, Peter. Talk to me about who holds the risk when a systems integrator is working with a leasing company. Are you guys charging back that systems integrator in the event of default of payment by that subscriber? Or how does that work?
So we carry the risk. That's why we have a credit department. And Mindy, in your example, we appreciate you pre-qualifying the customer because nobody wants a deal that goes bad, obviously. But once the system's installed, they sign the agreement with us, we commence it, we fund you, we pay you, then we take on the responsibility.
Okay.
So we have a
And
collections department, that handles that. And The only time we would charge back a deal if there's blatant, fraud involved.
So are they allowed to continue to separately bill for service agreements, monitoring, things like so like you guys are you're not getting involved in any of that. They still get to build all the recurring revenue on their services, correct?
Exactly. And that's a good point as well. We've got a limit of 30% on soft costs. So in the event your service maintenance warranty agreement is below that 30%, we can wrap that in and finance it as well. So the customer has one payment.
Oh, wow. That's really
Yeah.
cool. So you can wrap in some of that. That's good to know. And then there's some questions, Peter, about minimum finance deals, things like that. Do you guys have mins and maxes?
Yeah. So our minimum is about 2,000. We go up app only to 150,000. And then above 150,000, I'm going to need a full financial package. So I'm going to need 2 years audited tax returns, 3 months bank statements, a lot of times personal guarantor. It's the owner or officer of the company to sign. And that just depends on what we find from the business credit aspect. We'll pull a Dun& Bradstreet on the company, the applicant. We'll pull a PayNet on them. We'll look at time in business, et cetera.
Yeah, I just want to point this out. So, I think Peter mentioned it. Peter does financing for us for our mobile surveillance trailers. I have had dealers have said, "Hey, I want to move forward with a trailer." I have submitted their application and I have had same day approval. And I think actually like next day funding, maybe even on some of them same day funding, if it was able to progress through the paperwork process as quickly and usually the delay is on the customer's side to process it. So I can tell you just from my own experience, I was at a show in Nashville. Dealer said, "Hey, I want to do this." Submitted his app. I texted him. He did the app, and the next morning he was driving away with a surveillance trailer he'd put $1,250 down on. So it really is pretty cool to see just how quickly that works. We've got AJ on the call. AJ, are you guys offering any type of financing or leasing today?
That is 90% of our business. Probably 80, sorry.
Wow.
I am a big fan of leasing. I obviously steer most of our clients that way. I have come up with a formula, a solution in which we are covering all of our costs in the lease when we sign it up. And then I'm basically what I'm leasing out is our profit. And so I put a multiplier on it. The multiplier is the same every time. So it's pretty easy. Like every client gets presented with a lease every single time with every single deal. And we let the client know, here's your buy now price. This is you paying for it. You own it, right? On this side is your lease price. Lease comes with maintenance. A lot of folks will jump on I've got so many people that will, the minute that I bring up lease, they're like, "No, I'll just buy it." And I say, "Well, hold on, I have to go through the whole spiel, right? If you still want to buy it, it's fine by me, but let me tell you about our lease." And I'd say 60-70% of those people that were I'm just going to pay for it end up doing the lease.
Fascinating. So talk to me about that real quick. What's the minimum ticket that you'll lease in-house, and what's the maximum?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So somebody says, "I want a $50,000 camera system. I don't want to put more than $2,500 down."
Now,
can do
that they don't get to choose the down. Right.
Okay.
I'm controlling that. So because I am financing in-house, I'm not willing to put that much risk on the line. Right. So there's a percentage of, essentially we have our profit that we know that we're bringing in when we sell a job. Right. And I'm not willing to go underneath that and go into the negative. And so it is a significant difference in price. Right. But and most customers, when they're looking at the two, they're going, "Wow, this is, heavily discounted," right? I'm going to go with the lease on the discount side. And then I take what is the remainder, I put a multiplier on it, right? And then I divide that. If it's commercial, all of our commercial is 10-year. So I divide that over 10 years, or if it's a regular residential, I divide it over 5 years.
Yeah, and just for the sake of the studio audience here, I want to explain what we're talking about. We're not talking about assuming the risk really of financing a system to a new customer. We're talking about assuming the risk of financing the profit on a job to a customer. So like Just so everybody understands, this is not somebody needs a $20,000 camera system and we're just kind of, ordering it from SS&Si, obviously, right? Everybody on the call, sure. And then bringing this thing to that customer over time. Talk to me specifically about that, AJ. Let's say it was a $20,000 job. Are you willing to share what would your actual hard cost, equipment and labor be on a $20,000 job?
I do this every single day, about 3 or 4 times a day, so it's pretty simple, right? So I take the 20,000, right, is what you said?
Yeah.
So they would pay $12,000 down.
So for the folks that are on the call that are offering financing to customers, I want you to throw in the chat. I want you to throw into the chat if you're offering financing to customers in-house today. Go ahead and throw that into the chat for me. AJ, what percentage of folks take the financed option versus paying up front?
A lot. We've been tracking it, and I mean, we're in the high 80s, low 90s of percentage of people that are on leases versus
Wow.
purchases. And I, as the business owner, I like it, right? Because I'm looking more at the longer game. So we have had, so to be fair, out of that percentage, our percentage of, we've had a restaurant go out of business on us halfway through their lease, right? But because we're talking about profits and because there's a multiplier in those profits, it's not the end of the world when we have somebody default. Like, I'm still paying Jake. Jake got paid for the cameras. I got paid for my labor.
We can't underemphasize that point, guys. Wait, like, in all seriousness, some of you guys play with your vendors' money sometimes, getting creative with this. So I do want to point that out. Thank you for being mindful of that, AJ.
Well, I mean, because that's it's a dangerous game when you start getting behind, right? So, and that's something that terrifies me. So I make sure everybody's paid. We do take care of the overhead of the job as well, right? So, I mean, we may if the job doesn't go 100% as planned, I mean, we may walk out of there with $800 or maybe $1,000 upside down in the job, but usually on that, like, that would be a larger side, and we're collecting that in a matter of 4 or 5 months anyway.
What's your multiplier on the $8,000 difference between 12,000 and 20,000?
1.5. What times 1.5?
Okay, so you're multiplying it times 1.5, and then you're dividing it by.
So, I mean, I do the math, and you can do it however you want, right? But so what I do is I take let's say that $12,000, right? I minus that off of the 20,000, right? Which gives me my difference in price, right? So then take that, let's call it a 5-year deal. I take that, I divide that by 60. That gives me a monthly price, right? I don't know the number.
133.30 for everybody that's following along, doesn't have their calculator out. Divide 8,000 by 60 months, we're at $133.33. And then we multiply that
times that 133 by 1.5.
The $200 a month.
Now you got to add your monitoring and everything else to that. So it's
which you would have gotten anyways. So let's not, for the sake of the math here, we're talking about the financing on the equipment. Yep. So basically we're talking about making $12,000 over time as opposed to $8,000 up front. Now, I'm going to throw this back to Peter. Now, Peter, I'm looking at this deal and I'm saying, all right, we've got $8,000. We've got $8,000 that we're financing here. And over 5 years, we might make $12,000. Talk to us about how a dealer might take that same $20,000 and do a lease on it, what the upfront payment might be to the customer and what their payment would be, which I believe, as long as they're not taking a discount on invoice, would be the full $20,000 up front. Is that an option?
Yep, exactly. So We do the similar thing that AJ does internally. We use a multiplier as well. So if the equipment cost is 20,000, we're going to base the payment off of that 20,000 using a rate factor. The dealer is going to make the 20,000. We may make 24,000 over the life of that. So, we're taking on the risk to pay the dealer up front to then bill that customer monthly for the opportunity to make that additional 4,000.
And what might let's say on a $20,000 invoice, what might the down payment be for a customer on a deal like that?
I just ran some quick numbers, maybe $408. So
400, what do you mean 408? That's their monthly fee or that's their down payment?
that's their monthly. Okay. So a lot of times we'll collect one payment in advance, two payments in advance, or zero. But typically there's not a down payment for the customer.
Wow. So for the folks, like, again, this is one of those scenarios where Alcom is going to do that deal for the church. If it goes well, great. They just made a bunch of money on it. AJ's doing these deals left and right because he's a star sales rep. First of all, this guy's killing it. Okay. If one of them goes bad, he's covered because he's got his upfront costs. He's paid his vendors. He's paid his technicians. He's not in the hole, right? One scenario, $20,000 invoice, right, is what we're after, $20,000. One scenario puts $24,000 in the systems integrator's pocket over 5 years. The other scenario puts $20,000 in the integrator's pocket today. Now, you decide, doesn't matter. I mean, you just have to make a decision one way or the other. That's what you do. You trade risk for profit, right? Like, I'm willing to take on risk and in return I get profit, right? But to the end user, to your customer, the difference is this. $20,000 invoice, down payment $12,000, or $20,000 invoice, down payment $408. Again, it doesn't matter. The way I look at it is, either way you sell it, my goal for you is to get out there and sell more systems, right? So like if AJ's model works for you, I'd love for you to do that, right? Like if AJ's model works and you can sell that, do that, make more money over time. If Peter's model works for you, do that, make money, everybody's happy. If the customer is willing to pay you up front, well, heck, do that, right? Like there's no sense in doing financing if somebody is ready to cut you a check. We've got Jerry Wilkins on the call. Thank you, AJ, by the way, and thank you, Peter. Jerry, tell us a little bit about what types of systems you finance today.
I don't currently finance anything, but I help customers understand it. I think one of the points that Peter needs to, it is Peter McCoy, the finance guy, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
They're doing the due diligence on the customer, so they own 100% of the risk. When you look at financing or leasing, I'm assuming they're dollar buyout leasing, they really have three strong components. Number one, your dealer is getting paid 100% of his proceeds, probably no more than 48 hours from the time that the signature is received on the acceptance. Is that a correct statement, Peter?
It's very correct.
Okay. So you're getting 100% of your revenue within 48 hours. Number two, if they're willing to finance up to 30% additional, you're getting 100% of your maintenance and monitoring up front. Now, you have to be careful with that because if it's a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year agreement, you're putting that money in your account today, but you have an obligation to that customer throughout the term. But that's something you have to figure out. So it's a huge cash flow benefit to whoever is purchasing the equipment from you via the lease. But number three, it is an incredible closing tool in that you're taking use the $20,000 example he gave. If you think about what security is, it's accountability and documentation. For video, it's who goes where, when for access control. You're taking all of these components, providing additional supervision in your business. And in his example, it's costing $1.89 an hour. Now think about that for a second. What do you pay a typical employee? If it's a C-store, if it's a liquor store, if it's any type of business where you could potentially have internal theft, vendor theft, or shoplifting, How can you pay multiple supervisors that never blink, never go to sleep, never establish relationships with folks that come in or that they work with, and for X number of dollars an hour, in this case, $1.89 an hour, you can add all that supervision of who goes where when, the accountability of documentation for slip and fall, for internal theft, for vendor theft, for shoplifting. Pick a flavor. It's such an amazing closing tool that if a customer says no, you really need to revisit how you explained it to them. How can you say no? You pay for your gas, by the mile, you pay for your electricity by the kilowatt hour. You never hire an employee and pay them for 5 years in advance wages, pay them by the hour. So why wouldn't you consider looking at your video surveillance, your access control, your intrusion detection as a benefit to the company that has an hourly cost rather than writing this huge check?
100%. Thank you so much for jumping on, Jerry, and thank you for breaking that down for everybody on the call. Guys, whether you're offering service agreements, whether you're offering leasing, what I encourage you to do is track your ability to sell either of these, right? Track how successful you are at selling upfront payments to your customers or financing over time. I can tell you in my own experience, large ticket, specifically mobile surveillance trailers, we offer financing as a standard every single time. I offer dealers a cash price, a finance price, and 9 times out of 10, alarm dealers themselves opt for financing, especially when we're talking about, in some cases, 0% interest or 4% interest. It's an incredible sales tool. It's something that I've been able to use myself. And when you look at the way that Jerry breaks it down in terms of the value of what you're offering, and you break that down over time and you start to understand, hey, what does this cost me per month, per day, per hour? It's a really easy thing to sell. And so I want to thank everybody for jumping on the call today. Peter's dropped his email address there in the chat if you want to connect with him. If you have questions, feel free to just reply back to the email that you got earlier today. Happy to answer them or happy to loop you in with Peter. Guys, we do this call every Friday at 11 a.m. Purpose of it is to share best practices, right? And help you guys overcome the challenges that you're facing. I want to thank those of you that do business with us. We appreciate the opportunity to support your business. For those of you that don't do business with us today or maybe don't do as much business with us as you do with other vendors, I'd love the opportunity to earn more of your business. I'd love the opportunity to support you, because what I've found is in partnership with our dealers, when they grow, we grow. And so again, I want to thank you for jumping on, and I hope to see you again next Friday at 11 a.m. Thanks so much.